What is this graph?
It'll be like this all, it's chain independent variable.
Close.
Can we
What?
just be in more?
Not in more.
It would be wider.
What's the square root function look like? We did the square root function last week. It's just the top half of the parabola. So the square root function is the top half of the parabola. When René Descartes invented this, negative numbers were controversial. So how many quadrants do you think he worried about?
One.
Pretty much two.
One.
Just one, not even two. They didn't even have negative x's.
I didn't realize that.
Pardon?
You can also go up and down.
He realized you could go up and down. He just didn't see the point to going below zero.
Why?
Well, temperature hadn't been, there was no unified temperature scale, so below freezing hadn't been thought of yet. Submarines hadn't been invented. The equivalent of like checking accounts and debts, debt was considered positive debt, not negative income.
Like this.
They just hadn't occurred to them yet. There weren't enough situations where it was considered useful. Well, negative numbers were figured out by other lunatics later, but so if you're only dealing in quadrant 1, all you've got is this half the parabola, and then you've just got this top half here. Are they inverses of each other now?
Yeah.
Yeah. These are both, if you just deal with quadrant 1, these are both inverse functions now. So he was fine with calling this an inverse function. When you introduce negative numbers and the bottom half of the parabola came back in, that's where you have a problem. Let me now get to some more specific examples. I guess you're not going to put that one in there. Okay, here's what I'm going to write about this one. Either, let me sec here. Either plus or minus root x. Actually, that should be y equals. Either half of plus or minus root x makes a function, but we say that y equals x, not that one. We say that y equals x squared has no inverse function. Okay, y equals x squared has no inverse function. All right, notation. Just to be annoying. All right? If you find the inverse function of f of x, you call it f raised to the negative 1 of x.
Oh, I think I remember this stuff.
What's really annoying about this? Anyone remember?
Finding the finding f.
It looks like
Well, I was thinking about this notation. It looks like something else. What else does it look like? It looks like you're raising it to a negative 1 power. And raising it to a negative 1 power means what?
Oh.
Taking it a fraction.
Like, what is 5 to the negative 1?
1 over 5.
1 over 5. This is why I don't really blame you guys for mixing up inverse, opposite, and reciprocal so much. This describes an inverse. But we use the same notation as we use to create a reciprocal.
That's really annoying.
I hate it. I really hate it. I wish mathematicians had decided on something else. But this is the notation we use for inverse, okay? With a function. Unless we put it on a number, then it means reciprocal. I'm not happy with that. So now let me find some examples and then, okay. Find the inverse function of actually I'm going to say f of x equals cube root of x plus 1. F of x equals x cube root of x plus 1. Find the inverse of this. First, I'm going to rewrite it as y equals, because I said the first step was to switch x plus 1, x and y. Now what do I do? I just said it, but I want to hear it again anyway.
So you
cube root y.
yeah, the x equals cube root y plus
Yep, x equals cube root of y plus 1. Now what do I do to get y out of that cube root box?
Divide it.
No.
No, it's not division. Exponents, if you got a
You raise
radical.
everything to the third power.
Very good, Amy. You raise everything to both sides to the third power. Raise everything on both sides. So x to the third power just becomes, well, x cubed. And then we're going to take this entire radical and we're going to raise it to the third power.
I love how I understand it now, but I didn't understand it last year.
Sometimes you just got to hear it for the second time.
Go away.
Yeah, then it just goes away. And you're just going to have y plus 1. Is y by itself yet?
No, you gotta, it'd be y equals x third plus minus 1.
Minus 1. And you're quicker at it this year, Amy. Okay, so that's how you find the inverse function of f of x equals... How's that? Okay, oh, so we're not done. Hang on, I got to write the notation in. For my final answer, I have to really annoyingly now write it as f to the negative 1 of x, all the while screaming in my head, that does not mean raise it to the negative 1 power, that does not mean raise it to the negative 1 power. It would be very blurry. Oh, for Amy? Luckily that doesn't have a lens
suck.
cap. That's the simplest, hardest to screw up camera in the world.
Wait, that's what she's holding on?
Yeah, the Mino flip camera. Those things are awesome. Okay. There's a couple of types of functions I won't have time to do examples of. This process is the same no matter what. If you can't solve for y, if you can't spell solve, that's also a problem. If you can't solve for y, then the inverse doesn't exist. But now there's one other thing here. Okay. If the inverse doesn't, if you can't solve for y, then the inverse doesn't exist. Now, proving two things are inverses, algebra.